Part 4. The First Steps. The following week was filled with secret meetings and hushed conversations as our small group began to take shape. Mr. Johnson as our guide, and Tom and I as eager but inexperienced recruits. We met every evening after work in Mr. Johnson's living room, surrounded by stacks of old books and papers that felt like relics from a simpler time, before Veridonia had become so reliant on technology. First things first, Mr. Johnson said one night as we gathered around his coffee table, cluttered with notes and diagrams, we need to understand what the Purists really want, and who is behind these attacks. Tom leaned forward, excitement sparking in his eyes. What if we set up some kind of surveillance? We could monitor social media channels or underground forums where they might be communicating. I hesitated at the thought of spying on our fellow citizens, but nodded slowly as Mr. Johnson considered it. That could work, he replied thoughtfully. But we need to be careful not to cross any lines ourselves. As we brainstormed ideas for gathering information, I felt a growing sense of camaraderie between us, an unspoken bond forged by our shared mission and fears for our home. One evening after our meeting ended, Tom lingered behind while Mr. Johnson went to grab some tea. "Jake," he said quietly when we were alone, "do you really think we're doing the right thing?" I shrugged, feeling the weight of uncertainty settle on my shoulders like a heavy cloak. "I don't know," I admitted, honestly. "But if there's something wrong happening in Veridonia, if people are suffering because of these attacks, I can't just stand by." Tom nodded slowly, but looked troubled, as if he was wrestling with his own thoughts about our mission. "Yeah," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But what if we're wrong? What if we make things worse?" Before I could respond, Mr. Johnson returned with steaming mugs of tea and a warm smile that made the room feel brighter despite our worries. "Let's focus on one step at a time," he said cheerfully, as he handed us each a mug. "Together we can uncover the truth, and whatever happens next, we'll face it together." As I sipped my tea and looked at Tom and Mr. Johnson, two men who had become unlikely allies, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me amidst the uncertainty that surrounded us. In Veridonia's shifting landscape of fear and mistrust, perhaps unity was our strongest weapon after all.